An inside look at the country's overwhelmed immigration court system.
For the thousands of immigrants who've come to the U.S. in recent weeks seeking asylum,
people who end up in the United States immigration court are stuck in limbo. More than 800,000 cases are still pending in immigration court. The average wait time for them is more than 2 years. And even though you get your first hearing, it's another long wait to get the next one. Former immigration judge Jeffrey Chase explains the situation.
In immigration court, generally, the hearings are, okay, I'm giving you from 9 to 10:30 or maybe from 9 to 12 if you're lucky, and if we don't finish within that time, you'll come back in 6 months or 8 months or something like that, and then we'll do another hour and a half, and then if we don't finish, it might be the next year. I always thought that was such a strange way to hear cases, where it's like you're just hearing them in sections spread out by such long periods of time. Why don't you just start it and you go until it's over, like in the other courts?
So what's going on in immigration court? We need to know about that. But reporting on immigration courts is different and difficult compared to regular courts. Immigration court is not part of the United States judicial branch. It's an administrative body. Immigration judges are attorneys in the Department of Justice. They decide whether a person should be removed from the United States or permitted to remain in the country. Operated by the Executive Office for Immigration Review, immigration courts are generally open to the public and giving priorities to media when space is limited in the courtroom. Sounds good, huh? But for sensitive cases, hearings may be closed to protect privacy. Most of them are asylum claims, as described by immigration lawyer Daniel Kowalski.
I think it's a reasonable rule because, for example, in an asylum case, you would not want a representative from the foreign government there necessarily for potential intimidation.
The problem is, judges won't tell you the exact reason they close a hearing. The number of asylum seekers is increasing. The asylum decision varies from state to state. More importantly, it depends on which judge you come across. In immigration courts, the judge, who represents the government, has the final word.
Immigration court, I would say, is generally a bit more informal in that, the lawyers generally speak while they're sitting down, and there's no court bailiff, and there's really like a lot less in terms of, in most cases, other than the master calendar, it's just the judge alone in the room, along with the attorneys. There's nobody else to tell you you can't step forward or you can't speak or to enforce if something gets out of hand. I always feel that's kind of strange. It's kind of like everyone's just on their honor system, and what happens if something goes wrong.
For some judges, journalists' presence can have a positive impact on courts.
We went to a detained setting in Arizona in 2008, 2009. The presence of the reporters in the courtroom made an impression on the judge. He gave a good decision, a favorable ruling for the client.
But it can also have an opposite impact. Again, it all depends on the judge. But judges are not allowed to talk to journalists directly.
The Trump administration has made a straight-out rule that judges are not allowed to speak anywhere anymore. There's no more communication. There's no more discussion of theories of cases or legal theories. And I think that's the way this administration wants it. I don't think they want judges to be influenced by outsiders, and I don't think they want judges being able to speak their mind openly and dealing with outsiders. They want the party line, So I think that's been the biggest problem with transparency under this administration.
Different from regular courts, immigration courts don't have public access to court electronic records, which is also called PACER, to provide public access to court documents.
In immigration court, the court records are closed. The only way anyone can see any of the court record is if the attorney or the client gives the file to the reporter. But otherwise, the court file, the court record is closed. There's no way anybody can see it. In my opinion, that should change. I think those cases should be open to the public, of course, again, with the exception of sensitive cases like asylum cases or domestic violence cases.
Julia Preston, who has covered immigration for more than 10 years, brought a lawsuit in 2013 against the Department of Justice for immigration court records.
A man named General Eugenio Vides Casanova. He was the former defense minister in El Salvador. He came to the United States and became a legal permanent resident of the United States for many years. He never became a citizen. Attorneys persuaded the U.S. government to open a deportation case against him based on his involvement in human rights violations. An immigration judge in Orlando wrote a decision justifying the deportation of General Vides, which was a decision that was over 70 pages long. It was a very extensive, important, major decision by a federal judge. And the immigration court took the position that this decision could not be revealed to the public. So here we have a major decision by a federal judge in an immigration court that is going to determine how human rights law will be applied in immigration. And we can't read it. So the New York Times litigated. We brought a lawsuit and we won. You can now read that case. And hopefully we established some kind of precedent or procedure for other people who want to read that kind of case by an immigration judge.
It's getting even harder to get access to immigration courts inside detention facilities. It requires a written request at least 14 days before visiting. Most of those courts are in remote locations, not only hard for journalists to get access, but also set barriers for lawyers. Stephen Franklin, former Chicago Tribune reporter, talks about his experience.
We need permission first from the government, and then we need permission from the jail itself, and then we need permission from the Homeland Security for someone to come with us to the jail. And this reflects the difficulty that lawyers also face, even though they're not barred, but lawyers have difficulties in setting up meetings, arranging meeting times, and because immigrants are moved around often for purposes of the court or detention reasons, lawyers have difficulty finding where their clients are.
Journalists have to take the responsibilities to report the truth, to review the untold, to speak against the non-transparent immigration courts.